Hey everybody, it's Jameson, and before I get started here, I'm just going to say something real quick. As you know, if you watch my videos, this is almost more just a creative outlet for me. This is consider it almost a video diary. I've said I'm not a teacher, I'm a learner, and I'm bringing you along on my learning journey. Lately, there was somebody who gave a little hate online saying, that I ramble a lot and the video wasn't all that helpful. And here's what I say to you. Then don't watch. Here's my free content. If you enjoy my free content, then feel free to watch. And you can skip ahead if you want, or watch it, 1.25 or 1.5 speed. And if you don't like hearing me, put me on mute. Or just unsubscribe and go on your merry way. So for those of you who do enjoy my videos, here's another one of me learning, and this may be long and it may be rambly and you may not get much out of it, but I'm gonna learn, and again, taking you along on my learning journey and somewhat of a video diary. And this time it is freeze and fuse. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm the last person, the last fuser who has ventured into this space. And so it is time. And I am swimming in molds because once I commit to something, then I can't seem to stop. And so I just keep buying molds, but I haven't actually made anything yet. So I have a ton of molds. I don't even know if I like this. I don't know if I'm gonna like doing this at all, but I've got the molds and I'm gonna get started. I'm making myself dive into this today. And I don't know, maybe I'll feature more of these in the future, but I thought I'd just show you what I have and kind of how I'm getting started. I have lots of molds that either I've acquired. I mean, I bought some of these years ago thinking one of these days I'm going to do that freeze and fuse. And so finally I'm doing it. There's also, by the way, lots of helpful resources online, not just this video, but you can go looking for others. There's also, I'm sure there are books and classes and whatnot. I've just learned what I have picked up online, basically. Facebook has a group that's for fusing. If you're a freeze and fuse, there's a Facebook group for that. Very helpful. So anyway, I've been buying these thinking I'm going to do that someday, and here's the day. So I have some that were gifted to me. This was given to me by a very good friend, along with this one, little mouse. How cute is that? I bought some at thrift. It seems like you can find these at thrifting all the time, and you know me, I love me some thrifting. I went out yesterday, by the way, and found some awesome pieces that I'm excited to incorporate into my work. And I found these Friday night. And so, hearts, this is a difficult shape to cut. And so this might be an interesting way to get a heart into a project without having to cut it. I don't have a water jet cutter, but certainly you can buy water jets, as I do often. I also don't have a ring saw, which is another way to cut hearts, but freeze and fuse might be a good way to get some hearts. So I liked those. Stars, same thing. Stars are hard to cut. Now I do buy water jet stars. I have several in the drawer that's right underneath this table. But I liked these because look at that texture, or that dimension you get, that kind of three-dimensional look. I thought that could fire nicely. So let's give that a try. Little Texas A&M. I'm in Texas, as you know, and I ran across these at the thrift store, and so I picked them up. I have more Texas. This one, where did I get this mold? I think I got this. This was not Amazon, but it's a Texas-themed mold. Where did I? Oh, you know what? I got this at like one of those home stores. I think it was like Bed Bath & Beyond or something. So anyway, thought that could be fun, and since I'm regional, I found this one on Amazon. It was a 2-pack of crosses, so I'm interested in playing with crosses, thinking that coming up on Christmas I could incorporate these into some ornaments. I basically do one show a year, and that show is a local arts festival, but it's held at a church. And crosses seem to do well with that audience. So that was a 2-pack. That's one of the molds I have. These are fun. These are plumeria flowers. I got this on Amazon. I've put the ones I've gotten on Amazon, I put in my Amazon store, by the way. I like these. I think these are going to be, this might be a really cool mold. So some of those succulents, that seems to be for freeze and fuse. That might be the gateway drug that's bringing people in, are succulents, and myself included, because I've seen some really awesome succulents that people are doing. So I got this mold. It's Wilton brand. So I'm sure you could pick this up at any store or something. I happen to buy it on Amazon too. You know what? Because I have a full-time job, and so Amazon becomes my opportunity to just fill a cart, and then it shows up a couple days later, and I don't have to go out running around a bunch of stores. I bought a multi-pack of a whole bunch of little molds that were on, this one also came from Amazon. I didn't unwrap them yet, but lots of flowers, so some roses. There's a lot of good, interesting dimensional elements to that. More flowers. This was kind of a floral pack. It had butterflies in it, so cool. Butterfly, oh, it looks like that's a bee, I believe. Ladybug. More flowers, some leaves, more flowers. So these can be little guys. I mean, and I love using Millefiori. Most of everything I have, I either got from Lori Moreno at Wilderness Glass or Tabitha Burrell. You know, Lori makes ladybugs, so I use Lori's ladybugs. I use her flowers, her leaves, Tabitha's flowers and leaves. So these little guys, I don't even know if I'll use these, but it might be fun to just play. So anyway, let me move all that messy sounding or that noisy packaging out of my way. So this is it. I'm going to play with a few of these and just fill them with various powders. And now there are a couple of ways in which you can do this. There's basically a slurry method, which is you take your powder, put it in a cup, add some water to it, mix it up, and then kind of pour that into your mold. And on some molds like this, you know, large Texas A&M, maybe even these crosses, this Texas mold, that would actually probably work fairly well. However, another way to do it is to add your dry powder in, then add water to the powder. And so what you can do there is you can get better shading and more detail. So using this flower as an example, you know, plumerias are mostly white, excuse me, I think, in nature, but you could add some pink highlights, maybe a yellow middle to it to give it a more natural look, then add your white powder, doing all of this as dry powder, then add the water, and you're gonna get a lot more detail in your impression. Same with something like these, you know, succulents kind of have often like a brown or tan tip and then various dimensions of green. And so you can end up using a couple different colors of powder to give these some interesting detail. So I am going to play with these a little bit. Let me show you, and I'm not going to, I might demonstrate one just to see how it goes, but I've kind of got my tools lined up. I use this ear vacuum. This is an ear wax vacuum that I bought on Amazon, also in my Amazon store, to suck up powder that goes out of where I want it. And so I thought that just might be handy to have on hand. So I got that. I am going to use distilled water for this. I think it probably depends on what your area is and what your tap is, but I just thought distilled was probably the best way to go to try to minimize minerals and such that might pop up in these. So I've got distilled water in a needle-nosed bottle, and then just various tools for which to apply powders and into my mold. So good old-fashioned restaurant spoon. I've got, you know, one of these rubbery tools. I can't remember what these are called, but just a cup round is what this one is. But anyway, just to kind of move powder out of the way. It's got a little silicone rubbery tip to it. I like little scoop and tweezer set. This actually came with the crosses. And so this might actually be a better way to do more water than this. I can feel like I'd be refilling this bottle a lot, so I might use my dropper here for water. Just paintbrush, little line applicator tool. This is good for really fine detail on powders. So we'll stop rambling for Mr. Man that doesn't like me rambling, and go ahead and film one of these and get started. One of the other tools I have is toilet paper. So if you put water in, I'll show you this, but once you put water in, you want to kind of get the excess water out before you put it in the freezer. And there's nothing more absorbent and perhaps less expensive than a giant roll of toilet paper. So I'm going to use that to dab my water up. So let's go ahead and dig in. Okay, I'm going free form on the camera work here because I want you to be able to see this, and I can't move this mold. I had pre-fired some little frit balls, like little guys, using, I think, medium frit for some other projects. And so I put in the indentations, you can see, gosh, I hope you can see this, on these mice. It's just not focusing right. Anyway, there were some indentations for eyes and nose. And so I used a little pink frit ball on the nose and little black frit balls for the eyes. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of pink powder in the areas of those ears and then fill the rest of it up with gray. So those are just very precariously set in the little indentations that are in the mold. So hopefully I can do the rest of this without disrupting that. Now I'm using my little sifter line tool here to try to get this pink in the area of the ears and not a lot past that. I don't know how successful I'm being. So this is just standard powder, nothing special here. And the color I chose was pink opal powder. And now as I look, there's a heck of a lot of powder kind of piled up there. So now I can use, trying to look around the camera and do this at the same time. Now I can use my little tool to try to rain some of that powder in. I definitely was not consistent in the application in terms of how much, like one ear has a little bit more than the other, I think. But you know what? This is an experiment. It is what it is. There's not a high cry factor to this. If these turn out, I have a great project in mind, so stay tuned for a future video. But, you know, this is just, this is Sunday morning playing for me. I usually get up early and play in the studio before it gets hot. I do have the air conditioning going anyway, because it is Texas after all. But I like to get up and play early before anybody else is even awake, and then go in and get ready for church after that. Okay, so now I've got my pink in there. So as I'm thinking out loud here, now I'm going to do Deco gray for the rest of the mouse, and I'm still going to use this little applicator, at least initially. I should be wearing a mask here, I think. But I'm going to, here's what I'm going to do, just for my own edification. I'm going to powder over the eyes. It's not coming out very well. It's clogged. Go over the eyes and the nose to try to basically secure those in there and keep them from moving. And do the same over my pink. So this has a little vibrating, you know, style action. The powder kind of, this is a super fine little dot applicator. In fact, I could have used this maybe to apply just dots of black for the eyes or dots of black for the pink, but since I had those frit balls, I thought I'd use those instead. But anyway, this little guy, you slide this thing over your textured handle here and it releases the powder in a little bit more of a controlled fashion. Sometimes it gets a little clogged because it's such a fine little hole, and maybe I got a, you know, bigger piece of powder in there. I don't use this thing often, but I'm glad I have it. I don't even remember where I got it. I get tools from all over. I mean, if it's something that's kind of a household good, then I often get that at Amazon or even just a, you know, Walmart or something. Something like this is clearly a specialized glass tool. And I think it might have come from the Glass Underground. I just don't know. I order a lot of stuff from Merrill and the Glass Underground. They're great people there. Someday I'm going to get out there and visit. That would be fun. Okay, so now I'm going to use this little guy to get into the tail. That would help with some definition on the tail there. I don't think I would need to use this, but I got powder in it and I'm just kind of playing now. But you can see how there's just a fine amount of powder that comes out. So if you want to get real detailed with some of these, this might be the tool to do it. You'll probably, if I do more videos, you might see this guy more often. Okay, so now that I feel like I've got that powder kind of protecting some of those more delicate areas, if you will, now I'm going to go all in here. Start to fill this guy up. Or gal. I suppose it could be a girl mouse too, right? I don't know that on some molds, I don't know that I want to fully fill it up, because sometimes you're going to want a more shallow piece. I mean, when you see how tall this guy is, you know, this is pretty thick. Some of these guys are pretty thick. That uses a lot of powder. I just don't know that I want to do that always. But on this mouse, if you'll notice, the construction is such, I think I'm going to have to do that, because the intention is that that tail, this is flat, totally flat. So you're going to have to fill that whole thing in, which now that I say that out loud, I didn't really need to do that tail the way that I did. So let me just keep filling up my mold. I don't know that I'm doing this right, guys. Maybe you should watch some other videos before you watch mine. I'm trying to absolutely fill it up with powder, because you know powder, it's going to settle. I'm going to add more to it. All right, let's go to water next. What I'm going to do is just drip some water in over this. You know who else I've seen do a little bit of freeze infuse, not a lot, but a little bit, is Tabitha, and I got an interesting tip from Tabitha, so we'll cover that in just a second. Maybe you've seen it too and know where I'm going with that when it comes up, but Tabitha's great, isn't she? Just all kinds of ideas coming from her. I just love her creative mind. Okay, so now I've got the distilled water. Tabitha Burrell has a YouTube channel if you don't know who I'm talking about. Okay, so now I'm just going to apply water here. Yeah, look at that. The powder's just sinking down in, so I'm gonna have to add a lot of powder, which is fine. I have a lot of powder. I've done some, you know, buyouts of people in the past buying, you know, somebody's selling out, doesn't want to do fusing anymore, tried it, like me, went all in and invested in all the things, and then was like, oh, I don't think this fusing thing's for me. So I bought a bunch of stuff from a woman, this was a while back. This was when I was first getting into fusing. So 4 or 5 years ago, I bought her kiln, and she had a bunch of powders. And yeah, she had a bunch of powders, and so now I've got her powders, and I don't use powders very often, and so anyway, I've got her stuff. Okay, so see how you just kind of tap this? What you don't want are bubbles, and I need to get that water kind of worked all the way down. See how those bubbles are coming up, like right there? So you can't have bubbles in this mold, because that would be bad. You really want that water to get all the way in, all the way down into the powder. And I'm going to put you on pause and come right back in just a moment. Okay, and we're back. Here's the tip that I picked up from Tabitha, and I know this seems kind of silly, because it is silly, but in order to get the bubbles out, Tabitha recommended a vibrator. So I'm trying to keep this video safe for work. I went to Amazon, and yes, indeed, you'll hear it here first. I went to Amazon and bought a vibrator for myself. And I got this little black guy, guy. I can't even say this with a straight face. Anyway, it's the least looking phallic device that I could possibly find. But the idea here is that this works quite well. You can see it rolling around in my hand there to help get any bubbles out. So there are probably other tools that you can try to use, maybe an electric toothbrush, you know, something else, but the idea was this is what really works the best. And so, you know, for me, 15 bucks on a tool that, you know, is really going to make my pieces come out well is well worth it, no matter what the original intent is. Okay, so I've got a lot of water in there, but I also need more powder. So I'm just going to now go through this process of little powder, little water, kind of fill this guy up. Kind of excited for these things. This is going to be fun. So I think the idea is to freeze them. Not, So I've read differing opinions on these. You need to freeze them long enough so that they're solid. But sometimes freezers, just by their nature, kind of dehydrate things. And so I've heard it said that you don't necessarily want to leave them in the freezer overnight, because then they could tend to dry out, and then when you pop them out of your mold, you might have breakage. So just long enough, to basically a couple hours to have them frozen, but not. And then if you don't want to fire them right away, well, that's fine. But then pop them out of their mold anyway, and maybe put them in a Ziploc bag or something, carefully, of course. I'm talking about this carefully. But that might then keep them from, kind of dehydrating. I'm just continuing to, I've got a lot of water on there. I'm just continuing to make sure I've got enough glass in this mold to level it out. And as you see, I'm keeping one tool dry, my shovel there, and keeping this one is the wet one. So you kind of see how that smooths back out again, like it looked. See how it's kind of dry and piled up, but as soon as you start to work it, that water kind of takes over and it starts to incorporate in. All right, I think it's time for my little glass tool here. This is a glass device, people. Woo! This is a teeth rattler. Okay. You know what? I think that they look fairly full. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tear off a little sheet of my toilet paper. Just get that excess water. So I don't want to dry the piece out, but I don't want standing water. So I want it to look kind of matte here in its appearance. I think that looks pretty good. There you go, folks. That is my first mold. Now I'm gonna do some others. I'll just do time lapse so you can kind of just watch me go. But I'm going to get this ready to go in the freezer. And I'll create a whole little tray of them that I'll put in the freezer at one time. Okay, everything's been in the freezer now for about 2 hours and seems nice and solid. I'm gonna pop these mice out first, and I'm gonna put everything straight onto my kiln shelf. So I'm just doing this quickly for a video to show you, and then I'll get it all on the kiln shelf and show you again what that looks like. So, fingers crossed that these pop out. I'm worried about these tails breaking off, so I'm just trying to make sure. God, I'm so nervous about this, and the fact that I'm doing it on camera was kind of stupid. Okay, they came out. Looks like the heavy vibrations caused the black eyes to move in there, and I still didn't get all the bubbles out. Look, there's a couple bubbles. That's frustrating, but it is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and put these in on the kiln shelf. My gosh, I was kind of a nervous wreck trying to get these out. So there's the mice out of the pack. That guy looks like his mouth is wide open. Not so happy with the mice. I've got a couple ideas on how I could do those better, but it's an experiment. I made a bunch of those little leaves in 2 different colors, so let's see how those fuse. And These crosses, same thing, there's some bubbles in there. I think I got to get a little tool down in there and kind of mix it up a little bit. That might help too. So unfortunately, a little Swiss cheese action there. You can see how these are already starting to kind of melt out a little bit onto the kiln shelf. Texas A&M logos. One of them looks pretty good. This other one's got some holes. I'll fire it anyway. These turned out kind of cool. So we'll see how those look. Here are the plumeria flowers. Again, holes, darn it. So maybe that vibrator's not as great as I thought. And then these stars, these turned out really cool. They popped out super easy, so I'm eager to see how those go. So now I'm gonna fire this whole thing. The best schedule it looks like I've seen online from a bunch of different contributors is to go up to 400, like 200 degrees an hour to 400, and then hold for 30 minutes just to help them kind of dry out a little bit. And then take it up to a low tack fire, 1280, 1290 in my kiln, and just hold for a few minutes. And then you don't even really need to anneal these if you're going to use them in some other projects. So let's fire it and see what it looks like. All right, I fired these, so let's take a look at what I got. I don't know, no particular order. I will say I got more bubbles than I thought I would. So I need to continue to practice and use that special tool maybe a little bit better. And you know, I think that's just part of it is practice. How do you apply the glass into the mold? How do you add the water? I think it would be really helpful to take, you know, the back of your you know, tool, or even just, you know, little tweezers, and kind of mix that around and get that slurry mixed up so that you don't have too many bubbles, and then that vibrator can help. So anyway, here's the Texas A&M ones. I'm actually pretty pleased with the way these came out. Now this needs a little cold working because I had some spikes on there because I was a little sloppy when I cleared it off. But generally speaking, those are pretty good. Now one is better than the other. I think this one looks a little bit better than this one does, but both have some bubbles here and there. And so what do you do with this? Well, you know, I have some friends that went there, and so I could just glue some magnets to the back. Their colors are white and maroon, so I chose to use white glass. You could take enamels, that would be kind of cool, and paint, you know, the A&M and paint the T in the middle, and kind of make those stand out a little bit more if you can find an enamel that works. And then you'd have to refire it, and I would not at all try to paint that on before you fire it because it's so fragile and would really just kind of fall apart. But you know, there's an example of the A&M ones. Let's go, keeping on the Texas theme. Here are those letters that I fired, the T and the X. I guess they go this way. So the case with this stuff, when you're doing powders like this in the freeze infused, they're gonna shrink. And so these shrank up just a little bit, as most of the pieces did. And that's to be expected. But do you see the curvature of the T? It kind of shrank up and curved up. So I don't like the way that turned out. Now, I didn't use as much glass. This was a thinner application because I was trying to get closer to a 3mm application. So I don't love the way that T looked, but I might play with that a little bit more. So if you have letters, if you have numbers, this might be a nice way to accomplish kind of some interesting lettering. Let's do the crosses next. So I was not really thinking too much about my glass color choice, again, because I was just kind of playing and testing. So I used salmon powder. Look how this one's got crap all around the edge. So cold working would take care of that real easy. But you know, as you're filling your mold, the better you are at kind of getting that cleaned off when you're filling it, the better your finished piece will look. But again, you can see some bubbles in there. Are they tragic? No. Here's the other one. This one, so this was salmon powder. I just have a lot of salmon powder from this buyout, and I don't use that color very much. So since these were samples I was playing with, I decided to use that. Now in this case, I put a layer of salmon, you know, kind of down on the main surface, and then I filled it in with white, which could give you, if I worked it a little bit, could give you more of a kind of marbled effect. That could look cool, or just lighten up the salmon color a little bit. Again, these are kind of on the thinner side. I was trying to, hopefully you can see these, trying to get to more of a 3mm type firing. So this one turned out really nice. This one had more bubbles, but this one turned out pretty well. And then this one was a little bit of a larger one. In this case, I used Neo Lavender, which you can kind of barely see, and then white, again, 3 millimeters. And again, this one actually turned out pretty nice, other than as it fused and kind of shrunk, it almost looks to me like the cross bottom here went left a little bit, so it's got a little curvature to it. But you know, again, kind of cool. You could glue a magnet on this, or put a little jewelry bail on the back, use it as a little ornament, little something to hang from your rearview mirror. You could glue another one to the back, and that could be an interesting look. So yeah, just some ideas on what to do with those. Oh, I forgot my Texas state. So this was the state that was part of this same mold. And I'm actually really pleased with how that turned out. So again, going for thinner there, more of a 3 millimeter, and I did get a couple of bubbles, but that's okay. And I am getting a little bit of schmutz on the back of some of these, so that would have to be sanded down. Just a little diamond pad would take care of that, or even trying to put it on a flat lap or something. But I'm pleased with the way that turned out. And so if you want something like this shape without doing water jet cut, or if you don't, like me, you don't have a ring saw, then something like this is kind of cool. So I'm going to pursue more of these Texas shapes, because I think that's great. Again, would make a really nice little magnet, or something along those lines, or an element to add to another piece. I know I'm rambling. If you don't like the length of my videos, just scroll past. Okay, so these plumeria flowers, these are cool. I'm pleased with these. Now, my color application kind of stinks, but I was trying to get a little yellow in the middle, and then I used Neo Lavender to kind of get into the petals a little bit, hoping for a little bit more of a purple tip. The problem is some of that yellow went in, and then the lavender and the yellow mixed, and now just created this kind of puke brown tip to the flower. But the concepts of these are great. I'm really pleased with the way those turned out. A couple of bubbles, nothing tragic. I think if you play more with, you know, pinks and purples and such, you can get some really neat flowers out of that. So I'm pleased with those. Let's talk about the mice. The mice are interesting. So as you remember, I put a little pink dot down in there and some black dots, but in vibrating these molds, the gray kind of worked its way under there. So now I've got some really weird looking eyes. Hopefully you're seeing this okay. This nose is toward the top, but this guy's nose fell down. And then look at the funny placement of this bubble. Can you see that? It looks like he's shouting or exclaiming, or his mouth is open, and that's totally just where a bubble landed. But I do like the pink on the ears. I think in a future version, I think I would still do the pink on the ears. I might just do a little touch of enamel on these when I fire them. This mold is deep, and you have this tail, which, you know, there's a little bit of glass in there to kind of fill that gap to keep the tail protected. Good friend Kathy Bidler has the same mold. She says she only fills it about half full to get little mice, not necessarily these fat chunky mice, and then skips the tail, and then she just bends a piece of stringer any way she wants to add the tail on. That's a great idea, Kathy. I love that idea. But these little guys are fun. So there you go. Perhaps the best results that I got were on those stars. Remember the stars that I said were 3-dimensional? Look how those turned out. They're really, really nice. I didn't get bubbles. The surfaces look pretty nice. This blue shined up really nice. The white is quite great. So these would make great elements added to a piece. I'm very, very pleased with how those turned out, how they fired. They're really awesome. They feel solid. Great pieces there. And then finally, I'm going to pick up the whole little bitty kiln shelf here. The leaves. So they're so small that I don't want to pick them up each individually. But 2 different colors. I used, what did I forget? Jade green and aventurine green. And these are cool. I dig these. This one's upside down. I don't know if I can turn that over. So yeah, I'm pleased with these. Now I think with something like leaves, the more color variation, the more natural it's going to look. So I think if I were to do something like this color in the future, I would put a little darker green in there first to give it some shading and shadowing and such. They're really tiny, really thin, but as you know, I like to do kind of floral pieces. I think these leaves could look cool in there. So I'm going to keep playing with Freeze and Fuse. I don't know if I'll do other videos on them in the future, but I just wanted to kind of share my experiences. I hope you enjoyed this, and hope you learned a little something. I hope that You know, if you haven't tried freeze and fuse, then I guess I'm not the last person on the planet to do this, but I hope you were inspired to perhaps try it. The molds that I've purchased on Amazon, I put in my Amazon store. That link is in the video description. I do get a little bit of a commission, but that's a nice thank you for all the free videos I put out. So appreciate your support on those. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you enjoyed this video and learned something, as I did. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.